During the Great Recession, a lot of really good realtors in my office started to take other jobs, retire, move, and I figured out how to, what I call, adopt their clients. So I bought their books of business. They endorsed me to their clients, and all of a sudden, I spent 4 years busting my butt to get to 200 clients. And over the next couple years, I went from 200 to 2,000 clients, working way less, because instead of getting every client one at a time, I was getting 2, 3, 400 clients at a time from my deals with these realtors who were retiring, moving, changing careers. And it really opened my eyes to how you could grow way faster and still by referral. And I ended up writing a book about it called The Golden Handoff.
So I maybe want to switch tracks here, because I think we've kind of set this up like, okay, you've figured out who you want to talk to, you've figured out the actual transaction, the marketing plan, you're making the calls, you're having those conversations. But now I want to go back and talk about the contract, because that's really where, it's like, okay, yeah, we negotiated the contract up front, but now we've got this income that's coming from it. And you've hinted at it a couple times that this is essentially a referral, like transaction split type situation that's happening.
Yeah. The way that I structured it was, because the first time we didn't know if it would work or not. We didn't know what the value of the business was. We were kind of in a depressed market at the time. I was like, hey, I'll just pay a referral fee every time someone in this database does something. Now, so the big difference that's important to note is, like, in real estate, when you get a one-off referral. So Chris, you're like, hey, I'm moving to Florida. Do you know anyone over in Fort Lauderdale? And I go, oh, I've got a great person. Let me refer you. They help you buy a house. I get a referral fee. But if you go like 3 years later and go, you know what, I'm moving from Fort Lauderdale to Miami, like, they sell your house, I don't get a second referral fee. In a Golden Handoff, where you are managing this database, if I help you buy and sell and invest every year, I'm paying a referral fee on every time I work with you. And that's happened. We had a client that sold 2 condos and bought a home it was over 2 years. And we paid a referral fee on each one of those transactions.
So the referring agents got their stamp on it for life.
So not for life.
Not for life. Okay.
So if you are getting out of the business and retiring completely, and you're like, here's the keys, I'm going to send this letter and do a couple of videos, and good luck, it's a 3-year deal. And that's because you have to keep a license somewhere. It doesn't have to be in the same state. Like, if you're licensed somewhere else, you can just keep that. If you're going to move and work somewhere else, you can just get the new license. If you're going to just retire, you just keep the one you have. Is the easiest thing to do.
Yep.
So it's a 3-year deal, and then it starts at 30% referral, then 20, then 10. You also get referrals for any new people you add, obviously, because you want to encourage the retiring agent to send more people to you. And they will have more people. They're going to meet people or get calls from people. Hey, you sold my neighbor's house 2 years ago. We want to sell. Can you come look at it? And you go, hey, I'm retired, but let me introduce you to Nick. Now, the partial handoff's different, right? So that's where you're staying engaged in some way, right? You're still in the game doing part of it, but you're just not doing all of it. And the way that typically works is you just pay a 25% referral fee for as long as they're in the game.
Right. Okay. So yeah, and this is something that, I think people will have picked up on earlier in the conversation. It's like, there's essentially like 2 sources of the referrals. There's the people in the database, which you're mining, and then there's just the relationship. So even if you're retired, you might still get text messages or calls from people exactly like you just said, that said, hey, I'm a friend of a friend. Who do I talk to?
Totally. Yeah. The retiring agent goes to their neighbor's barbecue and they're like, oh, my daughter just got married and they need to buy a house. Can you help them out? And you're like, not really, but let me introduce you to Nick. Like, they'll take care of you. So yeah, you want them to be an advocate, right? You want them to be part of your sales force out there, still connecting with people and referring you. And if people in the database are calling the retiring agent, let me know right away so that I can follow up. You don't want to just not communicate. You want to communicate that so that I know, who do I need to be engaged with. It starts with that initial push where you go over the database and go, hey, everyone in here is good. These 20 people, I think, are going to do something. Like you should definitely, even if you're going to call everyone twice a year, maybe you really stay on top of these 20 people because the retiring agent, believes that they are ready to go and they're going to need you soon.
So as the person who's taken over the database, how much information are you feeding back to the agent that has retired or moved to Florida? Are you saying like, hey, we got in contact with someone from your database and they're seeing a house? Or are you saying only when you enter contract or only when it closes? Like, what's that level of like communication that's going back and forth between sort of the original owner and you?
Yeah. So we would put the agent in their own database so that they would get the same marketing stuff that their clients got.
Yep.
So that's an easy thing to do. I would say once a month you want to give someone an update. So whether that's you give them a login to the database or you export a report and say, okay, here's your 300 clients. We set 5 appointments. We have 2 pendings, and we're going to get 2 closings next month from these pendings. And also too, I would say it's up to the retiring agent. Like if they want updates every week, do it. I mean, that's not hard to do. And if you've got someone else that just referred you 300 people, I think you probably will roll out the red carpet for them too, right? You should. But I think most people once a month is plenty. They just want to see that you're staying on top of it and see that you're having success. We have the team I work with, and I have a spreadsheet that just shows, hey, here's the people we're talking to. Basically, like you're doing consultations, you're setting appointments. Here's the people we have listed or touring properties or in contract, and then then here's our pendings. So basically, here's the people that are talking to us about doing something. Here's the people we're actually working with, like showing homes or have their property listed, and then here's pending.
Does that communication cadence slow down as you get closer to that 3-year mark? Do people usually kind of like fade out, or are people pretty engaged for that entire period?
I think it just depends a lot on the market. I think if you stay consistent with the calls and the work, I think you'll get consistent results. The truth is most people are going to put in like a lot of effort at the beginning. They'll get a bunch of reward at the beginning, and then your effort, just like with your own clients, can start to taper off. But if you stay consistent, I think you'll get consistent results. We've definitely replicated the entire production of someone who retired with their database. So they did 7 or 8 million in sales. We did 7 or 8 million in sales. So, and the thing that's crazy, so like Renee sold us her business in 2010. The bottom of the market was 2012.
Yep.
A couple years later, 2013, 14, 15, the market was going up like a rocket ship. And all of a sudden, every listing was selling for more. Our commissions were higher. So the value of that business actually went up. And people got more active. So we started doing more business, and the homes were worth more, and so we were getting paid more. Now the reverse could happen. So, I sold my residential business a couple years ago. Most of my clients aren't doing anything right now. There's a lot of people that they got their house, they've got their 3% mortgage, and they're good.
Yep.
And hey, they'd love to invest, but the numbers aren't penciling for them right now because they don't pencil right now. And so that's less productive than it could be.
Did that affect how you negotiated the transaction? Or because we probably were all aware of the state of the market, and what interest rates are doing, so would you have negotiated like a sort of like a longer fade out period saying like, this thing's probably going to hibernate for a year or two and then, hopefully come back. So instead of a 3-year fade out, it's going to be a 5-year fade out.
If I was going to do it today, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say where things are going. I will say this in my experience,
hindsight
the real
always,
estate,
being excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, the real estate market is rarely stable. It's
Right.
usually going up or down. It's really rare that it's just kind of flat. And I feel like right now it's one of those rare moments where things are kind of flat. Like
Right.
I feel like in 2019 things were kind of just flat. It just the transaction volume was like good. Pricing was not really going up or down. It kind of just felt like we were sideways.
Yep.
And I thought we were going to see a pullback, but then COVID hit, and then everyone decided to move to the suburbs, and everyone got money, and the market went nuts. Everyone in Portland had to get a place in, Palm Springs or Texas or Florida. People moved to Montana. Everyone had a plan, and everyone, all the realtors got real busy. So
Absolutely.
you could accurately predict a slowdown and then be wrong. So, or
Yep.
vice versa.
Yep.
I'm surprised at how resilient the market has been with interest rates, honestly.
That's a good perspective.
I feel like people are still doing stuff despite that being a headwind.
So bouncing around here a little bit, obviously the referral model makes a lot of sense. Would you ever consider doing like a flat fee, or is that a warning sign if someone's like, I just want like a one-time payout?
Yeah, it's so hard to predict the value of the business because until you start calling people and engaging with them, you don't really know if they love their agent as much as the agent thinks they love them or not. I've had that happen. I'm sure that would happen to me too. I'm sure there's people like my agents have called and they go, that guy doesn't even remember who Nick is. I had a huge team. Not everyone worked with me. They worked with my team. So I think the flat fee thing it's difficult to predict the value. And I think honestly, it's a bad deal for both parties because the referral model it just works really well. And if you end up with like a clunker, no one's upset. And if it ends up being just a blockbuster success, everyone makes more. So I did a bunch of interviews for the new book, and one of them was a gentleman who is like a team lead that helped sell a top broker's business to another team, and I think the number was like he wanted $500,000 for it, and it was worth that. Like I don't think there was a question that there was the value, but the way they did it was they still did it on referral fees. And basically, instead of it being like X number of years, it's like you'll pay me referral fees on everything until I get to this number. And I think that the punchline is they actually got to that number quicker than they expected. So it might have been a better deal to say, just pay me for the 3 years or the 4 years or whatever. I don't know all the details on that. I wasn't involved, but it's just an anecdote for you can still have a number or a timeline. So that's another way you could do it. Is, pay me 25% until I get 200 grand. And if it happens in 1 year or 6 years, it kind of that way it doesn't matter. It's that might be a way to address the market today.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's sort of like infinite variability there, and there's a lot of guessing.
I still think that the best example I have is there's a guy I helped for like a year and a half, David. He's in the book. He's a real guy. He's got a huge team now. He's done incredibly well. This is, 15 years ago. And he left town for like a year and a half to work on a movie. And I took over his business and took care of his clients for about a year and a half. And in today's dollars, I paid him in about a year and a half $150,000 in referral fees. There's no way I would have agreed to pay him 150 grand to manage his business for a year or two, knowing that he was going to come back and take over.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any way he would have dreamed of asking me for that much money. I mean, he ended up buying a house with the referral fees that I paid him on his business while he was gone. Now, the flip side of that equation, right, is like I also made an extra $300,000 net.
Right.
And so it was like home run for me too. And it got us into some really good neighborhoods, some great listings, some really good purchases. And then just plenty of just normal stuff. But I share that example as just he wouldn't have asked for it, I wouldn't have paid it, and that's what it ended up being worth for both of us. And I think it is so simple and easy to do it that way, and so incredibly hard to try to do it the other way. I just don't think there's an advantage for either party, really.
It seems like, a lot of the stories that you have, it's where it almost sounds like people undervalue the asset that they've created.
Well, yeah, and the crazy thing too, right, is like when you're in the rocket ship going up, burning fuel, right, you're spending money.
Right.
Right, you've got systems, tools, you've got, you're paying for real gigs, you're paying for an office, you've got an assistant, you've got buyer's agent, you're building this infrastructure, you've got MLS and dues and local dues and desk fees. But once you're the retiring agent, all you have to do is keep a license. It's a couple $100 a year in most states. You don't have any expenses.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Your income might not actually go down on a net basis, depending on how much you were spending to run your business. That's the crazy thing, is that not only could you be undervaluing it, you might make more money not working.
You might make more money not working. Okay, so that's hilarious. Yeah, exactly. And the profit on that, and maybe that's what you're saying. Like you're saying the take home on that money is much higher, right? Because I think the other element that you're talking about here is like the time horizon on ROI, right? So like you might think that, so most of the people that sign up for Real Geeks essentially have like a 1-year ROI period. After that, they've built up enough leads and they're seeing enough transactions come through that they're so fully in the advocate camp that, they're just super happy campers.
Yeah.
But you apply what you're saying, and it's like, actually, that database is just going to keep paying you, not just the referral fees over the course of your like sort of prime earning period of your career, but actually once you decide to like transition out, then all of a sudden you're in the pure profit phase of like monetizing that database.
Well, yeah, because so when I sent David that 150 grand, he wasn't paying an assistant, he wasn't paying desk fees, he wasn't advertising or marketing. I think he kept a couple websites up that had been doing good for lead gen for him. I think we took those leads that year. We kept those leads that came from the website. He kept all his referral clients when he came back. But I made 300,000, but I was probably spending 20,000 a month on overhead and staff and people and all of that. So I still made money, but I had expenses. He made really good money and had no expenses. We might have netted the same amount of money. Yeah. He might have netted more than me, to be totally honest. Yeah. I don't remember the exact numbers that year, but it's not out of question that he might have actually netted more than I did.
This sounds like an interesting component, when you're in the negotiation phase of one of these things, or even if you're thinking about it, because I can see someone getting really wrapped around the axle of like the commission split. But the profit portion of it is actually super critical.
It's huge. And I think another hang up a lot of people have when they're thinking about, am I really ready to hand this off, or should I hang on to everything?
Right.
Is they're thinking, I need to make $300,000 a year. But what they're forgetting is they need to make $300,000 a year because they're spending $150,000 a year on expenses. Right? And so if you can like shift your mind over, okay, if I don't have to spend $150,000 a year to run a business that makes me $300,000, you only need to make $150 to maintain your lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a career transition, right? And your expenses follow that transition.
Yes, and so, with these agents we were helping, when we managed David's business, he was at a different brokerage. We just brought him over to my brokerage and put him on my team so he had no expenses. We basically wiped out all of his expenses. So he didn't even have to pay transaction fees. Like he literally got every dollar of every referral 100% except for $400 to renew his license and do continuing ed. Something like $400 or $500. That's it.
Deal of the century.
That was literally the only expense he had to have in order to do this deal. And that if you can help people acknowledge that, you can help a lot of people choose to work with you earlier. Because if they can realize, if I can send you $100,000 a year, Chris, and you have no expenses, that might be just as good as making $200,000 or $300,000 a year.
Exactly. And if you talk to, that's just maybe good retirement philosophy as well. If you talk to financial planners, a lot of times they will point out, that hopefully by the time you're to retirement age, there's just less expenses that you would experience it in your younger years, less like rent and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, totally. And also as you're accumulating, right, and growing and investing, a lot of your money goes into investments, right? But like once you're retired, you're not like putting more money in your IRA and you're not buying more rentals. Now, if you are, great. But you don't, the point is you get to that point where you don't need to keep putting money into investments for the future, because now it's the future. Now you get to start taking the money back out, which is a really weird feeling. I think a lot of people, it is kind of like a weird mental thing to like switch gears if you've been really good about doing that for like 20 years. But yeah, at some point you get to hopefully take the money back out and use it and go do whatever you want to do. That's kind of the point. So
yeah, exactly. Even right now, picturing this, I'm having a hard time like not thinking about, putting money away. But that's the phase of my life. All right, Nick, I think we've covered a lot of this stuff. Is there anything that we've missed that is great information for the audience?
Every effort you can make to keep your database updated and stay engaged with people is it's worth every minute you spend on it, because it's going to return a better client relationship. It's going to return more people working with you now. And then when you're ready to do a handoff, whether that's partial or you do the whole thing and hang it up, it will be so much more successful and worth so much more in the future as well. And so if there's one thing I could go back in time and do better, it would be make sure you put everyone in your database, make sure you have a plan for everyone. And obviously you can automate a lot of that, but make sure there's a plan for like, how am I going to stay engaged with these people and be a resource and be top of mind, so that when you are ready to retire, it's really, your team's all there for you.
That's such a good point. I'm thinking right now, I'm like, I might have to like revisit the CRM portion of our website and, feel like it's the maintenance, like that automated, follow-up, the automated cadence, the home valuation reports, all that stuff is adding value to your database so that when you're ready to retire, it's there for you as well. That is such a good point. That like I had never thought about this. I've dealt with so many databases and CRMs in many industries, and I'd never quite thought about it like that. That is absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
All right, Nick, where can people find you?
GoldenHandoff.com. That's the best place to go. There's some great resources there. Make sure you sign up. You'll get access to the contracts and letters and scripts and dialogues that we talked about today, and put them in action right now. And you can find it on Amazon or just directly through the website. And thanks so much for having me on, Chris. Great talking to you.
Yeah, no, it's seriously our pleasure. This was really good. And we might have to have you back on in the future. I'm definitely thinking about a lot of the other people that we've talked to in terms of like sort of really like monetization strategies is kind of like the way that I think about it. And your perspective is just so different that, I have a couple other people in mind that I'm like, okay, what happens if you get like these three guys in a room? Like, what are we going to get out of it?
Yeah. So, I'd love that.
Stay tuned, hit subscribe down there below, and see what we do with this. All right, Nick. So if people are thinking about getting out, should they give you a call?
Give me a call.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching this episode of /Real Estate. Hopefully this got you thinking about the value that is there in your database and ways of monetizing it, whether it is working that day in and day out as real estate agent in that launch phase of your career or as you're transitioning out. You can leave comments down below. We read every one of them. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe.